Hey, beautiful people. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're coming back, welcome back. And thank you very much for the patronage. I really appreciate it. Today we're going back to Dan Biddle, who is the president of Genesis Apologetics. You would think that if these creationists really were trying to debunk evolution instead of scamming people, that they would actually learn something about evolution instead of strawmanning it, but they don't. At any rate, let's see if he can be a little bit smarter this time, and I can spend more time going through some of this stuff instead of spending my time correcting his dumb ass on things that he should know if he wants to be teaching this shit. So ball's in your court, Dan. What kind of stupid you got for me today? And might I suggest you sit down because I really don't want to see you hurting yourself. I mean, yeah, we are on opposite sides of the playing field, but you're still a human and you deserve compassion. And while you're thinking about it, if you're new, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button? And if you've already subscribed to me, make sure you're still subscribed because for some reason YouTube loves to unsubscribe people. Also, if you're new here, I'd like to thank you very much for giving me a chance. And for my fans and subscribers, thank you so much for coming back. You are the lifeblood of this channel. And now, with that, let's get on with the video.
Okay, the next one is DNA design. So we'll look at a couple of short videos about DNA here.
Really, dude? Look, I know that you have no fucking clue how to put together a list, but the list is supposed to start with your weakest arguments and go to your best arguments. DNA is not a good argument. Come on. And by the way, you couldn't get on your hands and knees and beg AIG Chelone, Georgia, PhD Giggles for this segment. Seriously, dude. PhD Giggles has a lot more cred in this area than you do. Not that I approve of the way she uses her credibility, by the way, because she uses her credibility to lie to incredulous people who think just because she has a PhD, she must know what she's fucking talking about. But at least she does know what she's talking about. Well, at least more than you do. You think that DNA is the same thing as a fucking computer language, which, by the way, it is not. Okay? DNA is chemicals interacting chemically. Computer language is not like that. Oh, all right. If you insist that we listen to your idiotic ideas that you have about DNA, I guess I'll listen to your idiotic ideas about DNA and then tear them the fuck apart.
Let's start by looking at DNA, a protein coding language that cannot be replicated by any scientist in the world. It's the most sophisticated information storage system in the known universe. Nothing comes even close.
So I think you're going for the "it's too complex not to be designed, duh" argument, which, by the way, complexity isn't the hallmark of a good design. Simplicity is. Complexity is the hallmark of a bad design. The more needlessly complex something is, which by the way, DNA is, because there are segments of our DNA that are quote unquote junk that serve no purpose that we know of right now. The more chance something has of fucking up that complex system that a more simplistic design can go right around, because it's not complex. Now, gee, imagine that. And how many times do we have to tell you people DNA is not information, at least not in the way you're using the term. Yes, it is a storage device, if you want to call it that, but it's not even really that.
In fact, over 10,000 DNA molecules can fit on the head of a pin, and unfolding just one of them reveals 6 feet of instructions capable of building who you are.
I have no idea where you got that number, but I did find this site that said that DNA is 5 to 6 feet long, that needs to fit in the nucleus of a cell, and so it wraps tightly around histones, which then form nucleosomes, which then form fibrous chromatin, which is then packed in the cell. And before you go saying, aha, 5 to 6 feet of DNA that has to fit in the nucleus of a cell, that means there must be a designer, because only a designer can fit that much material in the nucleus of a cell. Might I remind you that a cell has much more material than that? So suck on that. Also, DNA does not determine who we are. It determines what we are. It determines our genetics. Well, that and the environment. I'm not going to get into that. But we determine who we are, whether we're good or bad. And by the way, that means that we are responsible for our own actions. Don't give glory to God because you did something good. No, you did something good. On the flip side, don't blame it on Satan when you do something bad, because you're the one that did it.
Again, it screams design. I mean, you can take thousands of DNA molecules, put it on the head of a pin, just take one of them and stretch it out, and it's got 6 feet of information on it. Very, very amazing.
What, really? Shh. I'm trying to listen, so be very quiet. You know, it's funny. I don't hear anything. Are you sure that screams design, Dan? Well, it depends on what you are calling information, but a lot of that 6 feet is either repeating stuff or junk DNA, which is not instruction, but we don't know whether it really has any purpose or not, but it's junk DNA. Amazing? Not really. You really aren't that hard to impress, are you, Dan? Oh, of course you're not. You're a young Earth creationist. None of that says anything, even a screaming design. But if you want to argue design, you actually have to have arguments. And those arguments have to be backed up by evidence. You can't just say something and then your argument is look at the trees with no evidence whatsoever and expect us to take you seriously, honestly.
Feel any evidence for creation? Well, in fact, it does. If you look at mitochondrial DNA, this one's a little bit more complex to get through, but let's watch a short video about this.
Evolutionary researchers have based these timelines on the assumption that humans and chimps shared a common ancestor about 5 million years ago. That date was based on counting the mtDNA and protein differences between all the great apes and timing their divergence using dates from fossils of one great ape's ancestor.
Not sure when this video was made, but I have a feeling it was made after 2005 because this article from Live Science, which is from 2005, says that science has now pinpointed the range when humans diverged from chimps to 5 million to 7 million years ago. So you're not quite right, Dan, but I guess I can give you half a point, seeing as how 5 million is mentioned, but somehow you forgot to mention the 7 million. Gee, I wonder why. At any rate, I find it hilarious that these young earthers dismiss science entirely. Well, I mean, not entirely, but they dismiss evolutionary science entirely, but they still use evolutionary science to try to debunk science. Moving on, the next segment, logic, covers, and I'm pretty sure that Dan's talking about the same thing, the ENCODE project. So, since Logic addresses it, I'm going to let him address it now. Little aside, if you're not subscribed to Logic, I would highly recommend him. He's so funny. And honestly, I don't know what the fuck you're doing subscribe to me if you're not subscribed to Logic. Anyway, he's great. So take it away, Logic. Well, I suppose I should put the clip here that I'm letting Logic take care of in his rebuttal. So I'm going to put the clip here and then I'm going to let Logic take over for a while. My throat's still sore. So anyway.
So evolutionists have theorized, in part based upon the mutations of our mitochondrial DNA, which is a DNA that's passed through the maternal line, that they say, well, we think it would take lots and lots of mutations to go from chimps all the way to humans, and we think it was about a 5 million years ago process, and then we're learning things like this. They've compared now observed mitochondrial DNA. They took a couple thousand people, put them in a study, and looked at how quickly our mitochondrial DNA is actually mutating, how frequently the mutations occurred, and they expected, based upon what they thought of branching from apes to human, they thought, well, there should be one mutation every 6 to 12,000 years, or one mutation in every 300 to 600 generations. What they observed was one in every 33 generations, they're getting these mitochondrial DNA mutations.
Two. A couple initial things. That was never a scientific consensus. It was mentioned in that document that you mentioned. I've linked it in the description. There's been some question about the mitochondrial clock, how long it should be, how often mutations occur, and things like that, I guess. But it's never been a scientific consensus. The general view is still that mitochondrial Eve was somewhere approaching a couple 100,000 years, give or take like 50,000. But of course, scientific consensus
says evolutionists are most concerned about the effect of this faster, and I'll insert their observed mutation rate, not a theoretical one, but an observed one. For example, researchers have calculated that mitochondrial Eve, the woman whose mitochondrial DNA was ancestral to that in all living people, lived 100,000 to 200,000 years ago. That's based on what they were thinking. But using this new clock from the observed data, mitochondrial Eve would be 6.
So I guess I do have a little more to say on this before I go to his last segment of this segment of his god-awful fucking speech and then Logic's response to it. I don't know what study he got this from, and I really don't fucking care. So I'm not even gonna bother to look it up because, as any science-minded individual knows, instead of a scientific illiterate like this idiot, that you do not base anything on one study. More studies need to be done.
Point. What would it mean if mitochondrial Eve actually lived 6,000 years ago? Would it mean that that was the biblical Eve? Would it be any evidence at all that that was the biblical Eve? The answer to both is no. Mitochondrial Eve could have 1 million generations before her. It does not imply that she's the mother of the species, the earliest person. It means that she's the most recent common matrilineal ancestor. That's actually kind of the opposite of what you're thinking it means. Now, that doesn't mean that if the biblical Eve actually existed, she couldn't be mitochondrial Eve. But if it did turn out that mitochondrial Eve actually lived 6,000 years ago, it would mean nothing for the biblical Eve's existence. So it's kind of stupid to mention.
What does that mean? Here's how one science writer interpreted it. She says evolutionists are most concerned about the effect of this faster, and I'll insert their observed mutation rate, not a theoretical one, but an observed one. For example, researchers have calculated that mitochondrial Eve, the woman whose mitochondrial DNA was ancestral to that in all living people, lived 100,000 to 200,000 years ago. That's based on what they were thinking. But using this new clock from the observed data, mitochondrial Eve would be 6,000 years old.
Bullshit, fucking bullshit, fucking bullshit, holy shit, fucking.
Stop lying. The quote-unquote evolutionists, by which I assume you mean the real scientists, are not concerned. At least not yet. Like I said, that is one study. There have to be several studies. Until more studies are done, this one study means zip, zero, zilch. Get it? It's a starting point. Until there are more studies that confirm this, science says nothing. Science must explain the corpus of knowledge that we have. Okay? Not one little study. Just because you comb through all of these studies to find one that suits you does not mean anything. But even as you say, mitochondrial Eve was 6,000 years old, that doesn't get you to where you need to be, because as logic said, that doesn't say anything about the biblical Eve. And by the way, where's Adam in all this? You know, this would be oh so hilarious if your sheeple weren't so ignorant as to just believe you. And yes, there is a difference between ignorant and stupid. Let that sink in. You are stupid.
We've all heard that the idea that we evolved from chimps and that we're 98% the same. You all heard that before? Oh, the myth is we're 99, our DNA is 99% the same as chimps. Do you know that if you were to go ask DNA specialists now in every college around America that knows these studies, they would admit it's completely wrong. What they did to come up with that 99% estimate, when you hear the elevator quip that says, oh yeah, well, humans and chimps are 99% of their DNA, when they came up with that number, they ignored and discarded 1/4 of our genome at 18% of the chimp genome.
Oh my fucking God. Would you quit lying? Plus, I'd like to know, how long did you spend dredging up that particular study that you actually think agrees with you when it actually does not agree with you? By the way, thanks for citing the study so I could look it up. Gee, I wonder why you didn't cite the study. Could it be that you don't want your sheeple to be able to look it up easily? Because then they would know that you are a fucking liar and not to listen to you. At any rate, since you didn't bother citing the study, I'm not going to bother looking it up, although I have heard of it. And first of all, I don't know whether those numbers are entirely correct, but second of all, you're still not representing the study correctly. So let me help you out. And by the way, the study that he is citing is pretty old for 2022 standards. So the article that is above my head is from 2022. So you might want to take that a little bit more seriously. And also, I know my viewers tend to do research a lot, and especially when it comes to upsetting these dum-dums. So if you can find the study, put it in the comments. I'm sure everybody would like to know about it. First, a little nitpick. Danny, 98% is not the same as 99%. How can you possibly just insult your audience like that and they not respond to it? In any case, both figures are wrong. It's 98.8% of our DNA is uh, identical to that of the chimp DNA. And yes, I will tell you how they came up with that number. The 1.2% difference of the chimp human genome is based on the substitutions of the base pairs in the genes that chimps and humans share. And that's part of where you got those numbers from. In a comparison of the entire genome, which includes duplications and deletions in both chimpanzees and humans, that number goes up to 4 to 5%. So that means we share 95 to 96% DNA. But for some reason, you didn't tell your sheeple that. Wonder why. You couldn't possibly have an ulterior motive, could you? You, a man of God? Nah, don't even think about it. But it's not just this that you failed to mention. For some odd reason, you failed to mention comparison of retroviruses and chromosomes, which happen to share a whole lot of similarities. For instance, we both have retroviruses in the exact same place in our genomes, which is very odd if we didn't evolve from a common ancestor, because that's just way too much to be a coincidence. So, if your God is real, he must have decided that he wanted to trick us into thinking that he didn't create humans especially. Well, friends, I wanted to give you your weekly dose of stupid, but like all things, you can overdose on the stupid, so I'm gonna call it quits for now. Thank you for watching. I put a lot of clips in here because there were some things I wasn't quite sure about, so other people who know a lot more than I do about these topics would be the ideal ones to explain these topics, which is why I put in clips of them explaining. Plus, I mean, come on, they do it a lot better than I could. So, anyway, thanks for watching. If you like what I do, please subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Please like the video. It pumps up the algorithm. Leave a comment down below. That also helps the algorithm. And please share this video, especially with any young Earth friends. If you are financially able, please join this channel. You can join for as little as 99 cents a month. You get custom emojis, and you also get these debunks early. So only if you're financially stable. And I will see you guys later. Bye.